So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover that day's newspaper in a very short span of time within 20 minutes. Now, today we are going to be covering 2nd August 2024's newspaper. And the important news items that featured in today's newspaper were as following. Okay, so let's take a look at the topics of the day. So, there were only three news items that were of extreme importance for us. All right, these are those three news items. Number one, Supreme Court recently gave a judgment, a landmark judgment regarding sub-classification of SC/ST list. All right. Now, what is this issue? How this judgment of Supreme Court is considered a landmark judgment? We'll talk about this. Then, recently, Government of India actually in its budget decided to reduce custom duty on physical gold or custom duty on gold. And there are rumors going around that India is going to, or the government is going to, abolish sovereign gold bond scheme. Now, what was this sovereign gold bond scheme? We'll talk about this. Then, in the end, we'll talk about Disaster Management Amendment Bill 2024. It was just tabled in Lok Sabha. Okay, so we are going to be talking about this bill. This bill will amend the Disaster Management Act of 2005. So, what are the changes being proposed through this amendment bill? We'll talk about all these things. Okay, so without further delay, without further ado, let's start with topic number one, which is sub-classification of SC and ST list. Now, first of all, let's talk about what was in the news. Okay, so a 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court through 6-1 ruling permitted states to create sub-classifications within SC and ST categories. Now, this 7-judge bench ruling actually overturns the 2004 Supreme Court decision. Okay, and in 2004 it was a 5-judge bench. To overrule the judgment of this 5-judge bench, a larger bench had to be constituted. So, a larger 7-judge bench was constituted and it overruled the 5-judge bench judgment in 2004. The name of the case was E.V. Chinnaya versus State of Andhra Pradesh. And what was the Supreme Court's ruling in that case in 2004? Look, Punjab and Andhra Pradesh and many other states like them actually wanted to subcategorize or subclassify various or subclassify or subcategorize SC/ST list. Now, what do we mean by that? Look, there is an SC/ST list made by the President of India as per Article 341, and there are various castes mentioned in this list. Okay, now Punjab and Andhra Pradesh were trying to favor some castes over the other castes. Okay, by subcategorizing different castes in this SC/ST list. So, what did Punjab wanted to do? So, there are various SC communities in Punjab, but Punjab government wanted to favor Majbi Sikhs and Valmiki community. Majbi and Valmiki community more. And for that, they wanted to subcategorize this SC/ST list. But Supreme Court in 2004 said that no state can subcategorize SC/ST list. SC/ST list is a homogeneous list and there is no subcategorization permitted. Okay, so this is the background. Look, Article 341 of our Constitution says that President will create a particular list of SCs and STs. Okay, it is in the hands of the President to create a list. Article 341 of the Constitution says that. And if you want to add or subtract any community from this list, well, that is the job of the Parliament. So, as per Indian Constitution, state governments or state legislative assemblies have no role to play. Only President and Parliament. Okay. Now, states like Punjab and Andhra Pradesh in the past were trying to subcategorize this list. Okay, they wanted to create a category within this category of SCs and STs and wanted to reserve certain posts for these subcategories. So what they wanted to do was, like for example, government jobs, 15% of government jobs are reserved for SCs. Now what Punjab government was trying to do was that it wanted to reserve 5% of jobs for certain SC communities and 10% jobs for other SC communities. Now this is known as subcategorization. Andhra Pradesh was also trying to do a similar thing, and therefore their decisions were challenged in the Supreme Court in 2004, and Supreme Court ruled against it. Okay. Now, in 2004, E.V. Chinnaya versus State of Andhra Pradesh, it actually struck down this judgment. Okay, and that is why an appeal was filed in the Supreme Court against this judgment. And to decide on this question, a larger bench had to be formed. This was a 5-judge bench. Okay. That is the situation. Now, what were the arguments presented by Supreme Court back in 2004? Why did they discard this ruling? Okay, so what did Supreme Court say in EV Chennaiya case? The court had held that any attempts to create a differentiation within the SC list would essentially amount to tinkering with it, for which the Constitution does not empower the states. The Constitution clearly mentions that the list will be prepared by the President and addition and deletion shall be done by the Parliament. So the Constitution clearly mentions no role for the states. And if states are going to subcategorize these castes or this list, well, then they would be tinkering with the list, and that is not allowed under the Constitution. Plus, they say that Article 341 clearly says that the roles for President and Parliament are there, not for state government. Plus, they said that if they are going to favor certain SC communities over other SC communities, that would be violative of Article 14, which is right to equality. So these were the arguments presented by Supreme Court in EV Chennaiya case. Okay, first of all, there is no role for state legislative assemblies in this. Article 341 is very clear on that, and if there is any subcategorization, that would be violative of Article 14. Now, Supreme Court now, with a larger bench, has gone against EV Chennaiya case. Supreme Court's opinion in EV Chennaiya case. Okay, what did the Supreme Court say now? They say that sub-classification of SC/ST list does not amount to tinkering. Okay, so any addition or deletion to that list will be done by the Parliament. The list will be prepared by the President. States are just subcategorizing that list. They are not adding or deleting any caste in it. Okay, so subcategorization is allowed. States have the power to subcategorize. It's the power just doesn't is not just isn't just with the Parliament. It's also with the state governments. Plus, the Supreme Court said, with a warning to state governments, that your subclassification should have sound reasoning behind it and should be based on empirical data. You cannot randomly subcategorize. Okay, your subcategorization should be backed by empirical data, and you have to prove through empirical data that that particular communities are more backward than other SC communities, and you can give them extra reservation, not extra, but reservation within reservation. All right. So now this is the standard that precedent that has been set by the Supreme Court. States can subcategorize within the SC list. All right. Now to the second news item, which is sovereign gold bond scheme. Now, what was in the news? Following the budget announcement to cut import duty on gold, the government plans to make a final decision regarding the future of sovereign gold bond scheme in September. Okay. Now, government has already reduced import duty on gold. Now, by doing this, government has made gold cheaper for Indians. Okay, gold prices for Indians are going to drop. Okay, because now import duty is less, we'll be easily able to import gold. And this is in a way government's encouragement to the people to buy more physical gold. Now, many people are saying that government might discontinue with the sovereign gold bond scheme. And this is a sign that government might discontinue with this scheme. Now, sovereign gold bond scheme, what are sovereign gold bonds? Sovereign gold bonds are just paper gold. It's like you are buying gold, but in the form of paper. Okay? In detail what sovereign gold bonds are. But sovereign gold bonds were launched so as to discourage people to buy physical gold. Because India was buying a lot of physical gold, Indians were. And for that, India had to import a lot of physical gold. And because of that, India's import burden increased. So to discourage people from buying physical gold and importing physical gold, government launched sovereign gold bond scheme. A very good investment scheme for investors who want to invest in gold. Okay. Now we'll talk about sovereign gold bond scheme, but first let's talk about government's reason for reducing import duty on gold. Look, recently gold prices were skyrocketing. International gold prices were quite high. And on top of that, government is levying a tax on it, right? Because of that, gold prices in India were very high. Now, because gold was unaffordable for many, this provides an incentive for smugglers to smuggle gold. Because when you smuggle gold from outside, you don't have to pay duty. You can sell that gold for cheap in the market. Okay? So to prevent smuggling of gold, government actually reduced this duty. Now, smuggled gold and actual imported gold would be similarly priced, so there is no need for smuggling. Okay, so the rationale was to curb gold smuggling. Now, why does the government think that it needs to discontinue with sovereign gold bond scheme? Why? What's the rationale behind that? First of all, government thinks that sovereign gold bond scheme, government's fiscal deficit, or let's just put it in different words, cost of financing fiscal deficit through sovereign gold bond scheme is quite high, which means that government's financial burden increases because of sovereign gold bonds. It's actually costly for government to issue sovereign gold bonds. Though investors or people like you and me who are investing in sovereign gold bond scheme, our interests are quite high. We are gaining a lot, but government is losing a lot. And it's kind of a financial burden on the government. So government is saying to the people, you buy physical gold and don't look for sovereign gold bond scheme. Okay, though government has not made any official announcement, but people say that sovereign gold bond scheme might get discontinued. Now, what is sovereign gold bond scheme? So it was launched in 2015. These are basically government bonds which are denominated in grams of gold. So, for example, there is this piece of paper, and on this piece of paper, it will be written 10 grams. That means if you want to buy this piece of paper, you will have to pay the price of 10 grams of gold. Let's suppose 10 grams of gold costs around 60,000. Okay. So you'll pay 60,000 to get this piece of paper and you'll use it as an investment option. After some years, when 10 grams of gold becomes 1 lakh, okay, you can sell this piece of paper for 1 lakh. So it's like you are holding physical gold, but in paper form. Okay. You are investing 60,000 now, and after some years, you can sell this piece of paper like you would have sold gold for 1 lakh rupees. Plus, on top of this, you will also get an interest of 2.5% annually, which you wouldn't get on physical gold. So government actually wanted people to buy this instead of physical gold. They are substitutes for holding physical gold. Investors have to pay the issue price, which is the current price of grams of gold, and the bonds will be redeemed upon maturity. Interest is 2.5% per annum. Tenure is 8 years. So you can sell that piece of paper after 8 years or 5th year, 6th year, 7th year. Okay. Certain other facts regarding sovereign gold bond scheme which you should be familiar with, because now the government is going to discontinue it. It's going to be in the news quite a lot. So therefore you need to know each and every fact about it. So these bonds shall be denominated in 1 gram in grams of gold. Okay, 1 gram, 2 gram. Maximum amount that you can invest in these bonds is 4 kg of gold. Payment for bonds would be can be through cash, demand draft check, electronic. Market value of gold is assured. These securities are eligible to be put as collateral for taking loan. You can take this piece of paper, put it as collateral in a bank, and take loan on it. Okay. These bonds can be sold and transferable. Interest on this bond will be taxable. So when you're earning 2.5%, this interest income of yours is taxable. Plus, capital gains tax is exempted. You're exempted from capital gains tax. What is capital gain tax? Suppose you bought a sovereign gold bond for 60,000 and you sold it for 1 lakh, right? So you're gaining 40 lakh, 40 on it. So government would levy a capital gain tax on this profit of yours. Okay. Now gold bonds are exempted from capital gain tax. So this is another benefit. Okay. That's about it. Now let's move on to our last news item, Disaster Management Amendment Bill 2024. Union Minister of State for Home Affairs Nityanand Rai on Thursday introduced Disaster Management Amendment Bill. Now this bill is going to amend Disaster Management Act 2005. And why do you think government introduced this bill? Because there have been so many disasters in India. The recent one being the Kerala disaster, and before that also there were various natural disasters. Now government thought that there are certain things that we can do to deal with these disasters. Okay, so government wanted to make some institutional changes to deal with these disasters in a better way in the coming future. Okay, so for that government has brought this amendment bill. Now two primary things are going to be done through this bill. Okay, first of all, the bill seeks to create a disaster database at national and state level. So there will be a disaster database which will contain all the important data with respect to a particular disaster, and that the information regarding that disaster would be saved for future consultation. Okay. Plus, in India, there is National Disaster Management Authority. There are State Disaster Management Authority. Okay, but government thinks there should be an urban disaster management authority as well, because these urban disaster management authorities would deal with big cities. So UDMA, urban disaster management authorities for big cities, should be established. Big cities have their own challenges. Okay, NDMA and SDMA can't deal with them. SDMA and NDMA would deal with them like they deal with the rest of the country. But UDMA would deal with those challenges which are specific to that city. So, for example, Delhi, let's suppose Chennai's UDMA would be equipped to handle Chennai specific issues. Okay, so an urban disaster management authority should also be set up for all the state capitals, large cities having municipal corporations, except Delhi and Chandigarh. Okay, so these are the changes that are being proposed. First, urban disaster management authority. So, along with NDMA, which is tier 1, SDMA, which is tier 2, there should be a third tier called UDMA, Urban Disaster Management Authority. Now, urban disaster management authorities shall be headed by a municipal commissioner who would be responsible for preparing and implementing city level disaster management plans. Along with this, there is a specific force to deal with disasters. Okay, if there is a disaster, so for search and rescue operations, there is a specific force in India raised for this purpose only. It is called NDRF, National Disaster Response Force. Now, under the previous act, the 2005 act, it was not mandatory for states to have their own SDRFs. It was voluntary. States would, if they want, they can establish their SDRFs. If they don't want, they don't have to. But this bill actually makes it mandatory for all states to have their own state disaster response force, again for search and rescue operations. All right. And on that note, we come to an end of this lecture. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it added value to your preparation, though it would add more value if you are regular, consistent with this lecture series. All right. So make this lecture series a part of your daily routine, and I'll see you next time with next day's current affairs. Thank you, everyone.